in Hell, a look back at Saturday Night Live with your hosts, Matt and Keith. Brought to you by Lion's Den Audio Theater. Like and subscribe to Lion's Den Audio Theater for more Lion's Den goodness. And here are your hosts, Keith and Matt.
Episode 19 of Saturday Night Live with host Madeline Kahn originally aired on May 8th, 1976. And tonight, it's, as usual, Matt and I are here. How are you doing tonight, Matt?
Oh, I'm pretty good. It's a cold, rainy Saturday night tonight, but holding up, ready for the wrath of Khan.
Very good. And joining us is actually the only voice you heard before mine. Our dear friend and collaborator, Christine, who also provided us with our intro.
Hello, friends.
Hi, Christine.
You're like
How
Don
are you?
Pardo.
Yeah.
Christine is our Don Pardo. That's right. So, Christine, it's Saturday Night Live. It's 1976. Do you have any Saturday Night Live memories of that period or later? Certainly, you weren't born yet, but looking back,
no fresh memories from 1976.
No.
But no, I didn't really get into SNL. Actually, I would say I never really got into SNL, but once clips were like readily available at YouTube, I think that's more when it was on my radar. So that was way later than most people. And that was probably like, the early 2000s when the like pop icons were appearing on SNL and things like that. And I was like, oh, what are they doing? I started to kind of follow Tina Fey and later Kristen Wiig. But early SNL is like brand new to me in a way.
New ground. This is great though. It's a good mix. I mean, people know by now that Matt and I have memories galore, not from the period, but from later periods. So this is a nice perspective. I'm very much looking forward to.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation here.
Sweet. And our host tonight is Madeline Kahn, and our musical guest is Carly Simon. Are you familiar with either of those?
Yeah, but I'm not like intimately acquainted with their work. I know, You're So Vain, of course, but that would be also, I know Carly Simon that well. And that's also about as well as I know Madeline Kahn. Yeah.
My understanding is that Madeline was abandoned on SETI Alpha 6 some time ago. Because of a genetic mutation, she was a superhuman. She threatened the ship. But anyway, I promise I don't have more of Star Trek jokes.
That's fine. Keep them coming. So, Madeline Kahn, Carly Simon, what is your familiarity with both?
I know Madeline Kahn is an actress. I know that whatever she's in, I am absolutely not the target market for. But I know she is some sort of Hollywood actress. But I don't know anything really about her body of work. Carly Simon, I'm much more familiar with. Well, I don't know how much to expand presently, but I couldn't name 10 songs, but I bet I could name less than 10 songs. But but also more than 2.
Okay, all right. So you've got Christine and I beat there. I think
actually more than 3 now that I heard that first little jingle, Half a Chance.
I like Carly Simon. I do often get her mixed up with Carole King. I think it might be the James Taylor connection or something, but I'm more familiar with Madeline Kahn of the two. Let's talk about Madeline Kahn. So Madeline Kahn was born in Boston in 1942. She moved to New York at a young age. She was a trained singer and an actor who found some early success in theater. By 1972, she made a mark in film, appearing in What's Up, Doc? And Paper Moon, and she got an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress in Paper Moon. Shortly after this, she found a collaboration with Mel Brooks and Mel Brooks' comedy movies. Most memorable from this point in time would be Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. Kahn was an extremely talented performer who excelled in comedies. Her latest film in 1976 was Gene Wilder's The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother. And that was made with a few of the Mel Brooks' usual cast members. Her next film after this, that was due to be released shortly after this appearance, was Wonton Ton, the Dog Who Saved Hollywood. Madeline holds the distinction, perhaps, of being the first second-generation performer to appear on the show, as her mother Paula Kahn played Gilda Radner's mother in the Elliot Gould episode 9. Now that's contingent on if that toddler was Oz Perkins or not in the Anthony Perkins episode. So hopefully that gives you some information about Madeline.
Yeah, that's great.
We go to our cold opening, and it's Chevy Chase playing an organ in front of a band. A member of that band is Garrett Morris, who has the saxophone. So Chevy Chase is actually playing Ronald Reagan, and he's the first of 7 people to play Reagan on Saturday Night Live, even though the caption clearly says it's not Ronald Reagan. He wants to show everyone that a conservative can be hip, and he likes to associate with African Americans. After calling Garrett a boy several times, Garrett gets mad and punches Chevy off his stool, where Chevy gives the Live from New York at Saturday night. There's certainly some terms and stuff in this piece that might not show up these days. However, I think they did a very good job in this sketch of showing how Reagan, despite trying to be cool and hip, was actually just a racist conservative at the time.
Yeah, for me it was a moment to calibrate what era I was watching. For sure. But I don't know, I agree with you, Keith, that while there were moments where I was like, oof, that you could not say that now, that the point of the sketch it came across to me anyway.
Always nice to be reminded that Ronald Reagan is a piece of shit. Fuck Ronald Reagan. I hate when Chevy does his non-impressions, though. Like, I'm going to address this point in further detail later in the episode, but I mean, he's not even trying. He's just, do something. Watch a tape, try a voice, but, it could be Ford, except he's got a bigger grin.
Yeah.
It doesn't. So, yeah, I just don't like Chevy doing these, but otherwise I agree with everything.
So the monologue, Madeline Kahn comes out and mentions that in 1/2 hour, it's going to be Mother's Day. She sings, and the song is a 1915 song by Theodore Morris and Howard Johnson, and actually spells the word motherp. Kahn seemed nervous, but I didn't know if she was playing nervous or if she was actually nervous. But I thought she did a good. Job here.
Me too. Good first impression for me. I thought that the song was cute. It was short and to the point. I hate when they beat a monologue to death. Good first impression. Seems like they know what they're doing so far.
100%. I love the short, sweet monologue. I thought it was super cute, mother. And really, really good first impression. I was like, okay, I'm looking forward to this episode now. I wasn't so sure with the opening, but I was sold after the monologue.
The last host that I was completely unfamiliar with was Jill Clayburgh, and that didn't turn out so well. I approached with pessimism, is all.
We next go to John Belushi as the wilderness comedian. He's a Las Vegas-style stand-up comedian in a tuxedo shirt and a buckskin jacket who has turned his back on society and left for the mountains to do stand-up for little furry animals that are sitting on logs. These animals were puppets on very cheap wires. The sketch is narrated by Aykroyd. The puppets really love their wilderness comedian. I laughed through this whole friggin' thing. This was another good turn by Belushi, I thought.
I thought it was fine. I really like wordplay and puns, and so the first couple of jokes got my attention, but I got bored of it kind of quick. I wanted it to be just like a little tighter.
I thought there was something missing. Like I thought it was funny. I laughed when the animals started jigging around, and the concept I thought was great. But to Christine's point, it just kind of kept going. Maybe it would be funnier if he was like a blue comedian and he was telling dirty animal jokes. Like something like that would have worked better for me.
And I liked the bear heckler myself, but yeah, no, I enjoyed this. But at the end of the day, it wasn't like a contender for my favorite of the night, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
We then go to Not for Ladies Only, and this is the first real appearance of Gilda Radner's impression of Barbara Walters, aka Baba Wawa. And she's interviewing Marlene Deutschland, which is Madeline Kahn's impression of Marlene Dietrich. And it's a kind of a nod to her performance in Blazing Saddles as Lily von Stupp. Now, both of these characters have issues with pronouncing the letter R and L, and they use their W's a lot, as to some extent Walters and Dietrich did in real life as well. I don't like the notion of making fun of people's speech impediments. However, putting that aside, I thought these two women were so good in their delivery on this. And I just keep thinking that it's a shame that Radner and Kahn never worked together on a bigger project as sisters or best friends or something like that. This one, I give it a thumbs up, a big thumbs up on this one.
Yeah, I wrote down, as I was watching it, I was making some notes, and I wrote down chemistry in big, huge letters because I really enjoyed the way they played off of each other. And I agree with you. I was like not really excited about, making a gag out of like people's speech impediments or the way we speak. But I do love a joke about miscommunication. And so I really appreciated that. And also like that first appearance of a character that continues to be referenced that I heard about before I really even understood what SNL was, the sort of Baba Wawa. At the end of the day, I think I liked the sketch. I'm not in love with the premise.
I thought it was okay. I don't think I liked it as much as you guys did. I definitely didn't like it as much as Keith did. Christine, you were a little harder to read on that. Anyway, they worked well together and it was fun to watch. But I mean, that was all. It's just them doing, I get that, they did have great chemistry and we'll see them together later and we'll be like, they do seem like they'd be tight. Anyway, I digress. It didn't really do a lot for me. And Sherry O'Terry is just a better Barbara Walters than Gilda Radner. I'll fight about it.
Yeah, Barbara Walters really didn't like that impression. Of course, years later, she says, well, it was great. It was all good fun. But at the time, she was pretty pissed about that. Our next sketch is Slumber Party, and it was written by Marilyn Suzanne Miller. And it features Madeline Kahn, Gilda Radner, Jane Curtin, and Lorraine Newman playing little girls at a slumber party talking about how babies are conceived. So Marilyn Suzanne Miller, the writer, cameos sort of as the voice of Gilda's mother. I've never done a real slumber party. I've never been to a girl's slumber party. But this is sort of what I suspect would have been an accurate portrayal. I love the innocence of Gilda, the neurosis of Curtin, the obnoxious overreacting of Newman, and the semi-informed expertise of Kahn. I thought these were four tremendously distinct characters. The line, adopted children are such a pain, you have to teach them to look like you, got an audible laugh out of me. This was really good. I really, really enjoyed this. Thought all the cylinders were firing on this one.
Yeah, again, I thought it was fine. I liked it. I liked the start of it. It's like similar to the Wilderness Comedian for me, where it was just like a little bit longer. It was like a joke or two longer than I wanted. I just wanted them to get to the punchline and wrap it up. So yeah, it was fine. I wasn't crazy about it. I wanted a little bit more from those four women on screen together.
I do agree that it took forever to get where they were going, but I did enjoy when they got there. I agreed with you, Keith, that I really liked the characters. They were all very distinct, and it was almost like a horror movie-ish with their little slumber party. And speaking of which, Lorraine Newman was totally doing her exorcist thing when she was going off with the hurling, projecting Linda Blair.
Did it work for you better this time than when we saw it before in the Richard Pryor episode?
Yes, absolutely. And I forgot to mention, I really liked all their voices too. They all had really good kid voices.
I thought this was almost like a short play.
On the sketch being like a short play?
Yeah, I know they usually are, and basically it's brand new. But this one
Yeah.
seemed like something you could do at a festival.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I still feel like it could have been tighter, but it did have a nice, beginning, middle, end to it. And some really good lines.
The urban legends were great. I liked when she said you had to hold your breath.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was fun. And it was really the one that jumped out for me, was seeing Jane Curtin in a very un-Jane Curtin role here.
That's true. She was always so drab. I shouldn't say drab. It's not her fault, but it's just the straight lady.
Our next sketch features Garrett Morris as Mark Mabutu from the newly liberated country of Namibia. And he pleads with the United States to send them their unused fondue sets. People get them for anniversaries, birthdays, and housewarmings. They put them on the shelf and forget about them. Now, they already have the cans for underneath the fondue set, but they need the pots and the long forks. This killed me. I thought this was the funniest thing I've seen in a very long time.
Sorry, I'm just laughing remembering it. Yeah, I had a pretty good cackle over this one, but I also felt like I was wondering what I was missing in the news cycle of the day that was informing that sketch potentially.
I thought it was pretty funny. I guess I don't really have anything to add. It caught me off guard, and I laughed out loud. What more can you ask? It didn't overstay its welcome, and it's always just Garrett Morris doesn't get enough screen time.
Yeah, absolutely.
We now go to a chyron, a caption over a woman in the audience, and it says she's wearing underwear marked Thursday. Didn't really get a laugh from me, but these seldom do anyway. So next up, we go to Chevy with the Muppets. And yeah, they're back. They went in the crate. Matt and Chili were hoping that was the last we saw of them, but no, they're back. So Scred is in a crate, and he asks Chevy to ask Lorne to let them back on the show. Chevy said everything's really gone to Lorne's head. Scred says he knows someone who knows the Beatles and offers to take Chevy there, and it's the mighty Favog who sings She Loves You. If Lorne Michaels will let the Muppets back on the show, Favog will get the Beatles for Lorne. This whole sketch was kind of a waste of time for me. The only thing I laughed at was when Chevy said Lorne is having dinner with Pete Best to try to get the Beatles. Pete Best, of course, the drummer that they kicked out to hire Ringo. So he had about as much clout as I did. Christine, the Muppets have been sort of the bane of Matt and I's existence from day one. Did they do anything for you?
No. I thought it was fine, but it seemed like a throwaway. And so that's interesting to me that you say that it's kind of been the bane of your existence too. Yeah, I didn't think it really added anything. I thought it was like a funny idea that you would bring back the Beatles in order to if you would let the Muppets come back on the show, but I don't know if it was funny enough to be a whole sketch.
I mean, they used to be longer and worse. So the fact that they're like this it's in that weird bad way, a breath of fresh air, breath of bad fresh air, I guess. Anyway, yeah, it's stupid. I actually thought Chevy said Peter Best.
He did, yeah. You're right, Matt. He did, yeah.
But yeah, no, this is stupid. I hate the Muppets. They must be stuck on a contract. That's all I can figure.
I was actually surprised that Chevy lowered himself to appear with the Muppets.
Probably got a little spiff in the pay stub, if you know what I mean.
Or maybe he said, I know who can save the Muppets. I can save the Muppets. So we now go to, it looks like Castle Frankenstein, and it kind of is. It's Victor Frankenstein and his assistant Fritz. They are demanding that they send up the kites, and a bunch of other monsters say send up the kites. And what this is a musical performance of I Feel Pretty with Madeline Kahn as the Bride of Frankenstein. And this is an homage to her appearance in Young Frankenstein. I didn't recognize Victor Frankenstein or Fritz at first, but it's Howard Shore and Paul Schaefer. This is done like a true performance piece, and probably the type of thing they should be doing when the actor or when the host is an actor who decides to sing. Thought the production value was great on this one. It was the band wearing the monster masks. And at the end of the song, Neil Levy, Mike O'Donoghue, and Aykroyd and Belushi, Gilda Radner and Lorraine Newman come out as villagers with torches to do the background. I really enjoyed this segment. I really liked this, not just because it was an homage to one of my favorite movies, but yeah, I thought this was great.
Yeah, I love an actor with theater chops on television. And while I was feeling a bit like, oh, it seems like everything's too long for me on this show. This was a long sketch, and maybe it didn't need to be, but I enjoyed the whole thing. I like a familiar song. I like a goofy premise. And yeah, I was like happy to hear Madeline Kahn sing. I was into it.
I'm noticing this episode is they're really the vibe I'm getting is much more variety show than what I usually get, which is fine. It's a little too much for me personally, but I totally understand why other people like it, and I respect that the show tries to do different things. That's what's important, even though it's not to my personal tastes.
So we come to Weekend Update. Chevy's calling a bunch of people and talking to them. Matt, based on all the calls we've heard so far, are we to assume Chevy is trying to get someone to cancel an orgy?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Texas is joining Panama, and they're going to name Ronald Reagan as the acting king. He likes king, but he isn't sure about acting. Haha. Ford has been losing in the primaries, and he's got a new strategy. He's going to campaign to win. There's an earthquake in Italy, and Chevy calls a friend in Italy, and they chat, and really the only thing about the quake that comes up is Chevy says, some quake, huh? There's a really bad joke about gay people wearing dresses, and they should not have done that. They know better than that. This is supposed to be enlightened New York City. Chevy reads a story about marijuana causing memory loss, and then he reads the story again, and we get another plea from Chevy Chase to send weed in for him to test. And then we go to our commercial. Is there anything in this first half that jumped out at you as being ridiculously good or ridiculously bad?
I thought it was pretty much just shit joke wall to wall. I didn't laugh once.
Yeah, I'm probably on the same page. I think I got really distracted actually at the gay men in the military wearing a dress joke, because I don't know, it's just so inappropriate. I did feel like even for 1976, they could have done better. So yeah, I didn't appreciate that at all, and that's all I could really think about for that first half of Weekend Update. I will say, like Weekend Update is kind of my favorite style of humor on TV generally, and so I love it, and that's probably what sucked me into SNL eventually. But yeah, not really thrilled with that first half.
So then we go to a parody of the Bounty paper towel commercials that were done featuring Rosie. It was originally played by Nancy Walker, and not too long ago they tried to revive them with Andrea Martin as Rosie. Madeline Kahn enters with wet pantyhose. Jane Curtin playing Rosie. Paper towel test with Madeline Kahn's pantyhose, and then gives her some super absorbent and dry hose. Madeline Kahn is really impressed, and when something spills on the counter, she sits up and sits on it. I know these Bounty commercials. Jane Curtin did a good job. Madeline Kahn did a good job, but this really wasn't funny, and I actually found this to be awfully dragged out.
See, so I laughed actually watching it, mostly because I was thinking, was this really a problem? Were wet pantyhose a problem? Like, that's nothing I've ever experienced as a person who occasionally wears pantyhose. And then it kind of lost my attention for a few seconds there. And then I chuckled when she hopped up on the counter at the end. So, I mean, I didn't think it was the most hilarious thing of the night, but yeah, I laughed more so than I certainly did in the first half of the Weekend Update.
Jane Curtin really carried it for me. I'm a sucker for her anyway, but her sneers and just the faces she was pulling as this lady made the sketch for me, certainly more than any of the jokes.
So we get back to Weekend Update. Chevy starts to deliver his next Francisco Franco joke, but he breaks up, and then the audience breaks up. So this was another instance of Chevy losing his composure. Franco has now held his breath since November 1975. Then there's a joke about Muhammad Ali beating Jimmy Young. The audience thought Young won, and Ali says his next fight will be against a 7-year-old blind girl. And this is, again, another joke about Ali fighting punching bags or jobbers. Emily Latella come back to talk about violins on television. This is much the same, but again, this is one of the more famous ones. But again, for myself, having gone through these, we see a lot of Emily spread them out. And Chevy reads the final story for those of us who might be cows. And he hides behind a inset of a cow and makes mooing noises. There wasn't much on this half either that really did it for me. Yeah, this was not great. It was not a great Weekend Update.
I did want to go look up the context for the Generalissimo Franco thing. And once I read the history of it, I thought actually that it was pretty funny without having that sort of contemporary context for this running gag in the news. I didn't really get it. And I liked Emily Latella, but I guess if what you're saying is like this is a character that repeats maybe too often, then this is not somebody I need to see all the time. But I thought it was a funny appearance.
She's on every week doing the same shtick.
That'd be boring.
It's painful. And yeah, I thought this is the worst Weekend Update of the season. So it sucks, Christine, that this is your favorite style of television, because they have never done it worse.
What a drag.
This is probably, in many ways, the most famous Emily Latella, and definitely watching it away from watching every other episode. It's good. And my complaint has never been about Emily herself or Gilda's performance, but it's repeated far too much that even when it is funny, I can't see it anymore.
Surely Saturday Night Live will learn this valuable lesson about not beating a property to death, right?
I hope so. Oh, it's been 48 years, and I don't know. We then go to Madeline Kahn, who introduces a pre-recorded performance from Carly Simon. And I'm just going to talk about Carly Simon for a second. She was born in New York. She's a singer, musician, songwriter, and author. She's the daughter of the co-founder of Simon & Schuster's, the publishing company, and her mom was a civil rights activist. She released her first solo album, Carly Simon, in 1971. It peaked at 30 on Billboard and got her a couple of Grammy nominations. It was 1972's You're So Vain, the single, that propelled her to stardom. It hit 1 and it stayed at 1 for quite a while. A lot of controversy about the subject of the song, like the Alanis Morissette song many years later. She has confirmed that Warren Beatty is one of the people, but there are at least 2 other people referred to in there. People have suspected James Taylor, Mick Jagger, and many others. Shout out to Carly Simon. She mentions Nova Scotia in there. Carly continued churning out hits through the 70s, and at this point in time, her last album was called Playing Possum, and Another Passenger, her next album, was due to come out in June of 76. Simon suffered from crippling stage fright, and she made very few appearances on TV. Her last recorded performance I could find before this on television was from 1973. So this is done a little differently. It's pre-recorded. It's 2 songs back to back. Her first one is, what's the first one called, Matt? I forget the name.
Half a chance.
I Have a Chance.
Half a chance. How could you forget? She told you 47 times.
So she sings Half a Chance, and she does that, and then she does You're So Vain.
I didn't really care for Half a Chance. I didn't really like it. I think it was the song she was releasing at the time. It was a new record. Makes sense that she would perform it for the show. I was happy with You're So Vain because I'm a sucker for something familiar, and that's about all. Yeah, good performance overall. It was interesting that it was pre-recorded, the first ever pre-recorded for SNL. Is it the only pre-recorded for SNL?
Sorta.
Okay. Yeah, so I thought the performance was fine.
Carly Simon, in my opinion, is somebody who has 1 song per album, and it's the first track on the album, and it's put on the radio, and you never hear tracks 2 through 10. And they're generally not very good. She's like you buy her greatest hits. You don't delve into the back catalog, which I guess is fine. Holy shit, that first song was annoying. It's just not a good song. I would call, you could argue that Carly Simon's a one-hit wonder, but Anticipation exists. While I know Mockingbird exists, I think it is one of the worst songs I have ever heard. When she sings that with James Taylor, it is like 2 Paul Simons duetting with each other. I really hate it.
Yeah. I have serious issues with this being pre-recorded.
Say
yeah.
more.
Big time. I understand stage fright is a legitimate thing. I have it myself. And none of this is really on Carly Simon herself. They offered her a spot. She said, sure, but here's my condition. And the producers of Saturday Night Live said, okay. So this is kind of on them. So in episode 5, Robert Klein, ABBA, through no fault of their own, had to lip sync a song because their backing tracks didn't arrive. The producers decided to humiliate them by putting that on a chyron on the screen. Now, ABBA was mainstream and uncool, but Carly Simon was pretty cool with the New York elite. So they can make fun of ABBA, but not Carly Simon. She gets a pass, and this bothers me. Now, the music was, the first song, whatever. You're So Vain, great performance. Featuring Chevy Chase on cowbell as well. Yeah, this really bothers me. Years later, like Ashley Simpson will get busted because she's lip syncing. At least she's standing there live in front of a crowd. I can't trash it completely because there are elements of the show I really like that aren't live. But a big cache of the show for me and for 90% of the viewers is seeing a live performance of a show. And this early, they crapped out on it. Would I have done it for the Beatles or the Rolling Stones? Probably, but to sacrifice your format for Carly Simon just didn't make sense to me, and I have a problem.
Carly Simon. Imagine doing it for Carly Simon. I agree completely. They shouldn't have let her do it.
Like if Pavarotti said, "Okay, I gotta be pre-taped." Well, you go for it. But if Aqua says, "I gotta be pre-taped," do you go for it?
Well, are they doing Barbie Girl or not?
Now, by no means am I really think Carly Simon is very talented. I think her lyrics, especially for songs like You're So Vain, are extremely well done. Tremendous talent, still tremendously talented these years later. That's a bad precedent to have set, and fortunately they don't really go down that road too much over the years.
So were you saying that you would have made the exception for some but not others? But it seems like you're not really arguing her talent. Is it that you think it's justifiable because they have a bigger draw potentially with an audience, that it's like justified for a producer to make that decision?
Well, I mean, I want to sit here and say to you that if I was, Lorne Michaels or Dick Ebersol or whoever pulling the strings, I would say, no, you have to be live or you can't do our show. That's what I want to say. But I know realistically, if I'm in a position where I run on ratings, some exceptions would have to be made. And I'm sure they made this as much because Carly Simon didn't appear on TV very often. But in 1975, a few years after her biggest hit, is she one you would make that exception for? One of the big arguments about Saturday Night Live today is that there's so much pre-recorded stuff that can they even use that name anymore? But yeah, it really bothered me that this was not done live.
Yeah, certainly there's something to be said for like a live performance when, especially if a show's a little flat, and accepting the fact that, okay, it was live, you know, but in this case, I guess I agree with you when it comes right down to it. I don't think the performances were so great that they needed to be on the show, that they needed to be pre-recorded for the show. It would have been fun to see somebody perform live in front of the audience.
Yeah, that's what they had Madeline Kahn for, I guess.
They had some live music. There you go.
Yeah. Our next sketch is called Nixon's Final Days. And this one has a complicated writing history. It was written by Al Franken and Tom Davis wrote this on LSD. And then Ann Beats added the diary entry section, and Lorne Michaels insisted on Sammy Davis being in there. So this is a satirical dramatization of the Woodward and Bernstein book Final Days. We have Madeline Kahn playing Pat Nixon, and this is the second First Lady to be shown on the show. And she's writing in her diary, and it flashes back to Dan Aykroyd returning as his super awesome Richard Nixon, this time with no ape mask. Chevy plays David Eisenhower, and he's the second person to do so, as Aykroyd voiced it in a previous episode. And Gilda's playing Julie Nixon. Jumps from different points in time in Nixon's last few days in office. We have Belushi in as Henry Kissinger, instantly recognizable. Audience loved it. And then we go to a bit where Sammy Davis Jr. comes in. It's a good Sammy, but it's definitely not the best we'll see on Saturday Night Live. Sammy sings I've Gotta Be Me, and that song was previously appeared on another episode. He spends the skit arguing and yelling at paintings of previous presidents. He's using some racially charged language towards Kissinger. Pat Nixon also uses some pretty bad language in there to refer to Asian people. Aykroyd was fantastic. This, to me, is great political satire. It's topical, and while some of the language is hard to hear, this is a pretty accurate account of what Woodward and Bernstein were saying was Nixon's complete breakdown in his final days. Leaning on advisors for advice and then criticizing, ignoring their suggestions, talking to the paintings, completely breaking down. All the impressions were great. I find this is far less fiction and more distorted truth. And considering the high-profile stuff we get from Franken and Davis, the Pong sketches and a silly sketch at the end, this was a huge step up. And while this was a kind of a parody of Nixon, it's also sort of parodying the source material as well. I really, really liked this and thought this was one of the best things we've seen on the show to date. However, I will caveat that by saying I read a lot about Nixon.
I didn't like the diary parts at all. I could have done completely without them. Frame it another way. I don't care. They just weren't. I didn't think they were funny, and they were just draggy. But everything in The Office I thought was fantastic. I thought everybody was so good. I thought it was weird and funny. And yeah, I just thought everybody did such a good job. Everybody put effort into their characters, especially when they're playing the president, Chevy Chase.
Yeah, I don't really have anything new to add to that. I the use of slurs in the sketch really pulled me out of it. But overall, I thought everybody's performances were really good. It was chaotic for me. So, it did feel like a bit of a trip, but I laughed. I mean, I thought it was funny. I don't know that I have a need to go back and watch it again. And I'm not the history buff that you are, Keith, that's for sure. But yeah, I thought it was good.
It captures two things, I find, and I don't know if it was because it was different writers, but it captures, number one, the left hated Nixon. But number two, a lot of people were sort of down on Woodward and Bernstein for the book, which completely exploited a person whose life was falling apart. Whether you believe, you agree with Nixon's politics or not, they do take a lot of cheap shots in there. So it's an interesting sketch. Great political satire. A little bit of trivia. Dan Aykroyd loved wearing that Nixon suit and tried to get that suit on in his wardrobe as much as he could.
I love that.
And Stacker, Matt, our list of the top 50 sketches of all time, puts this at number 29.
I'd say that sounds pretty fair.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
We now go to a Gary Weiss film. I used to say these are always popular with us, but they've definitely gone down in their stock has dropped slightly the last few weeks. This one is using Ray Charles's version of New York's My Home, intercut with clips of fans at a sporting event. I assumed it's basketball. I didn't like it. I liked parts of it, and I liked the idea, but I didn't like this. I have a feeling, Matt, there's elements of it you do like, but I'd like to hear what you're thinking.
I didn't really like too much of it at all, so I'm curious to hear what you thought I might have liked. But I thought it was... one note. I like the visuals. I always like the visuals that he puts in front of us. Otherwise, this didn't work for me at all. Stock plummeting. What did you think I would enjoy? Was there anything in particular?
Yeah, the visuals. A lot of shots of gritty New York.
Yeah, okay. Well, I love that. Yeah, I mean, I could have watched it on mute.
Yes, I had the same thought, actually. I like these pictures, but it was really jarring. And just like, I feel like, I mean, I know I've said this 3 or 4 times already, but it was just too long.
Yeah, these Gary Weiss films started out hideously. It was the Christmas one. But then he really won us over and starting to lose me now, Gary. So then we go to Chinatown, and it's John Belushi playing Jack Nicholson's character, Jake, and Madeline Kahn plays Faye Dunaway's Mrs. Mulray. She comes in looking for her father, and Jake promises to follow him, and they suddenly jump into a version of Peggy March's I Will Follow Him. They jump in and out of the song. I think this was a way of using Belushi's interest and Kahn's talents, but it was a pretty weak sketch. It ends with Kahn singing It's My Party, Leslie Gore's song. And I will take the liberty here of repeating Chili's comment from our last episode, where John Belushi is supposed to be a comedic icon, but he can't do an impression of Jack Nicholson. What's going on here?
Too much music, man. In this episode, for me, they're always fucking singing. It's too much. Pushing way too far into variety hour. It's getting a little, I was going to say high school talent show, but that's obviously the performers are above that, but the shit they're in isn't.
Yeah, this was quite the opposite of the I Feel Pretty sketch to me, where I did laugh. I mean, it took me a second to get the joke. I'm a little embarrassed to say that, but I was probably not paying as close attention as I should have been and didn't realize exactly what they were doing at first. So I had a laugh and then I was done with it. The joke was over and the sketch continued. Where I liked I Feel Pretty and it was familiar and it was fun, this was like choppy and just unnecessary.
It's a weird thing. I got myself caught in a loop here of thought, I suppose. So the character Belushi's playing is Jake, the role Nicholson played in Chinatown. But when he hangs up the phone with the person he's talking to at the beginning, he goes, all right, I'll talk to you later, Jake. So I, instead of just saying, maybe there's 2 guys named Jake in the world, I was like, is he supposed to be Jake? Is he Jake's brother? Is he Jake? What's going on here? But he might have even just said the wrong name. I don't know. But I spent far too much time wondering what they were trying to say there for a sketch that really wasn't that great. Our next bit is just a stand-up in front of the blank set. It's Madeline Kahn and Gilda, and they're doing just short micro-impressions, I'll call them. Kahn does a baby eating ice cream for the first time, and then Gilda does a parakeet learning to speak. I loved this, and I wish these two had done more together in their lives. And I really wish that, I hope as we go through this, there's more of these sort of random stand-ups of 2 people sitting there enjoying each other like this. I'm really liking this for this part of the show when they do it.
Yeah, I loved this so much. And I was like, oh, these guys are going to hate this bit. I don't know. I just enjoyed it so much. It was so much fun. It was so silly. Like, yeah, for me, it was just like nice and light, especially at this point in the show when I'm starting to feel like I'm not loving a lot of this. It's not that it was a terrible episode or anything like that, but a lot of it was just kind of like, meh, like I got the joke quickly and now I'm ready to move on. And this, I was just like delighted start to finish.
I thought the baby eating ice cream was cute and they obviously like each other, but Gilda's thing, just how do you say everything went on too long and you not mention that going on for so fucking long?
I mean, it was a little long.
It takes a parakeet a while to learn English.
Exactly. I mean, isn't that the joke that it's long in that case?
Anyway, I liked, it was fine. But Gilda's bit just didn't work for me.
Are you liking these though, Matt? These sort of semi out of character bits?
Yeah. Absolutely. I usually like them more, but you know what? I didn't like the last one either. So they're on sketchy ground for me lately.
So our last major segment is Madeline Kahn singing Lost in the Stars, the title song from the 1949 Gershwin, I think, musical. Madeline Kahn, extremely talented, but this was one song too many for me.
Yeah, I mean, a showcase for a obviously very talented person. And like I said before, I like it when we see some theater chops on television, but I didn't really care for it, especially, again, like at this point in the show, it's just ready for it to wrap up and end on a high note. And this was a little bit too drawn out.
This literally put me to sleep. I fell asleep listening to this song and watching it. Then I had to get up and come to do this because I watch right before we do the episode because I like to come in really fresh. If I sounded tired when we started,
maybe it was strategic. It's meant to be 1:30 in the morning. People are drifting off.
And then we have our goodbyes. Madeline Kahn says she had lots of fun. She really enjoyed herself. She wishes people a happy Mother's Day and thanks Carly Simon. Again, Dan Aykroyd enters with a bunch of papers under his arm. He's coming in late, and Garrett is also late. So again, I'm going to just track what those two guys are up to at the goodbyes because they never seem to be in the right spot or non-awkward. So that's the end of the episode, and we'll go into a little epilogue here. Madeline Kahn will be back, so I'm not going to touch on her stuff. That is it for Carly Simon, though. Her career continues. Hits, Grammys, nominations. Stayed busy. Still has a great fan base. 70s was definitely her era, but she's never really gone away. She picked up an Oscar, a Grammy, and a Golden Globe for Let the River Run. She randomly did a live performance at Grand Central Station, and one of her songs, Nobody Does It Better, is one of the more popular Bond songs. So she's done well for herself. Let's rate the music. And I'll start by saying Carly Simon was not live, and I just can't get over that. Performances were good. Second song is You're So Vain is a nice song. First one was meh, but she wasn't live, and I really wish she had been. Madeline Kahn's I Feel Pretty was exactly what hosts that want to sing should do. They should have some fun with it. Lost in the Stars, extremely well performed, but one song too many too late in the show.
Yeah, I Feel Pretty was my favorite musical performance of the night. And I agree with the both of you, a bit too much music in this one. I really liked the I Feel Pretty sketch, the whole thing, the familiarity of it. I thought it was fun. So you could tone down the music a little bit.
I didn't care for most of the Madeline Kahn musical numbers, and Carly had one dud and then just rolled out the hit. There wasn't anything special there. Pretty middling music for me, personally, as far as my taste goes. And also, because I know Madeline Kahn's good. That's just not for me. Bad music episode for Matthew.
So our host, rating the host as her performances, I thought she was stellar. She was fully integrated. She's multi-talented. She was active and in a lot of stuff. She really brought out some great stuff from the other performers, and the writers seemed to know how to write from her. Everything that was weak about this show, except for the Chinatown, didn't really have much to do with Kahn as far as the comedic side of things. Like I said, her last song was a bit too much. But she was someone who was known at this point to most of the world as just a comedic actor. And, she performed live when Carly Simon, who is a musical legend, went taped. I know I'm going back to the music, but I just can't wait to see her back. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I thought she was really strong. I think about what it must be like for guest hosts on this show, and the possibility for intimidation with a group that works with each other, weekly and joining the cast and trying to really hold your own in sketches. I think about the current season of SNL and some of the hosts and the way they have to really be wrapped like in other cast members in order to carry their scenes. And I don't feel like Madeline Kahn needed that. She was strong on her own in her own right and didn't need, 10 people around her in order to carry off a sketch. So I'd love to see her back. And I know she does come back.
Yeah,
she did very well. There's no denying how good she is or what she did. Good point, Keith, that most of what was crummy, she was not around. And I don't know, is that strike still going on? Because I kept seeing the boom mic a lot in this episode.
I think so. It was a 7-week strike. I think we've got 2 or 3 more weeks of that.
You can tell. It's a little rough around the edges.
Certainly better than the last one, though.
Oh, yeah.
And just a note, Madeline Kahn, she wasn't particularly comfortable there, and she found it a very unpleasant experience.
Really?
Couldn't tell any of that. That might be
Nope.
the best. I thought she was having the time of her life, but she said she had to approach it very clinically and just do it. And I mean, the place was chaos at the time. Let's backstage. Let's not mince words on that.
Who would have a bad time hanging out with egomaniacal drug addicts?
Yeah, don't forget the I mean, people were dropping their trousers everywhere, and no, it was if you're an actor or a performer who approaches things as a job, this might not have been the place for you. But I thought she did stellar, and to read that, I was shocked. What was your worst segment of the night?
Weekend Update.
Yeah. And I'm so sad to say
bad.
that.
I went with the Gary Weiss film. I can't do it. He's got to pick up his game soon.
For me, some of it it has to be Weekend Update because I was just so disappointed in it.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, there's an element of that with these latest Gary Weiss films for me. So what was your best sketch? This could be your best sketch, your best joke, your best segment. What was the best of the night for you?
Nixon sketch for me. Thought it was spectacularly performed. I thought it was clever. Thought it was well thought out. I thought the impressions were fantastic. Rare that they pull off a long sketch. And it wasn't perfect. Like I said, those diary bits were duds for me. But I think overall it was the best thing they did.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with this one because so much of it for me was like Midland, I think honestly my favorite bit was the monologue. And I just felt like because it's set, like you said earlier, Matt, it was like good first impression. I thought it was exactly as long as it needed to be. It was cute. It was a good introduction. And so I can't pick a sketch, but that was my favorite part.
For sure. Yeah, I actually slept on that. That was a good monologue, and I didn't even think of that. For me, any other episode, it would have been Garrett's fondue for Namibia. No question about it. But I also went with Nixon's Final Days. Huge hit for me, and just thought it was perfectly well done. Aykroyd is not remembered for his Nixon as much as he is his Carter, but his Nixon is great. So let's pick a star of the night.
I mean, I would say Madeline Kahn for me, but really what I'm thinking is that I wish that there was more Jane Curtin, and I wish that there was more Garrett, because I just wanted more of them in the episode. Yeah, that's where I sit on that.
I thought it was Jane Curtin. No surprises. The bounty lady was hilarious. She was great in the kids' sleepover sketch. Yeah, and she leaves you wanting more.
Well, this is rare because all three of us went in different directions. I wanted to say Aykroyd for the Nixon, but I went with Gilda. Baba Wawa, the innocent girl at the slumber party, the parakeet, a relatively inoffensive Emily Latella, and a passable Julie Eisenhower. It was a busy night for her, and she was very much present, and she was very different in everything she did. I absolutely felt I had to go with Gilda. For me, overall, strong show. Carly Simon's pre-tape brought it down. Musically, Madeline Kahn made up for it, but we wound up with a little bit more music than I would have liked. A little bit of intolerant language, more so than usual on this one. Within the context of the sketch and who was saying it, you can tell it was made to make that character look bad, but still it might be a tad jarring today. That being said, I thought everyone was at least performing at their best tonight. Thought Kahn was great. Definitely could have used more Lorraine, Jane, and Garrett, but that might mean taking something else out that I'm not sure I would have liked to see go. Aykroyd, Belushi, and Gilda I thought were especially strong tonight. The Nixon's Final Days, the Wilderness Comedian, Fondue for Namibia. Thought everything save Weekend Update and some of the music was pretty darn strong. I gave this one an 8 out of 10. What brings it down for me was Carly Simon's song, Chinatown, Madeline Kahn's last song, The Muppets, and Gary Weiss. That sounds like a lot, but what was there for me was pretty damn stellar. So 8 out of 10, that's a high one for me.
I reacted physically to you saying 8 out of 10. Way too much music. There was way too much wrong in this episode for me for the things that went right. Weekend Update was garbage. There was song after song after song. There was a lullaby at the end. That weird movie, that Chinatown bit with the bad Jack Nicholson. There's just way too many flaws for me to overlook for the good Nixon sketch and the sleepover, which wasn't even, that's not a home run. I like the bounty bit more. Carly Simon bit was just, it was just kind of there. It wasn't offensive. Well, that first little bit is pretty offensive. Half a chance, on romance. They used to call the palace the last chance for romance. 4.5 out of 10.
Oh, that's way lower than I was expecting, Matt. I was going to say 7 out of 10. So I'm closer to Keith. I say that because I thought it was fine. I watched it. I was thinking if I saw that live and somebody asked me how the show was, I would probably say, yeah, it was good, and then not really have anything to comment on. So yeah, I give it a 7 out of 10 because I thought it was, good enough. But 4 out of 5. Whew.
You said 4 or 4.5?
4.5.
Okay,
4.5 out of 10.
Oh, that's what I meant. Sorry, 4.5.
We have an 8 at 4.5 and a 7. That gives us a 6.5 as our average. Puts us a little high on our exchange rate of 1.5. The fine folks at the Internet Movie Database gave this a 7.8.
That's too much for me, man.
This ranks the episode as the third best of the season. Ours, IMDb's third best of the season. And as of July 2021, it's the 63rd best episode of Saturday Night Live up to that point, up to July of this past year.
That's
high
crazy.
for you, Matt?
Yeah, way too high. Like, what do people point to in this episode that was so fucking fantastic?
I think Nixon, a lot of people. And in their list, sorry, Matt, go ahead.
It was like a one sketch show for me personally, is all.
Yeah, is one sketch does that really make it the third best of the season? I mean, and you've watched the rest of the season, so where does it rank for you?
Of the 24 episodes, there's still a couple we haven't seen, and one of them ranks higher than this one as a better show. So I'll reserve my judgment on that. But for me, I ranked, this is, let's see, my own ranking. Yeah, I'm ranking this third so far. This ranking is, Matt's got it low middle for Matt.
For a first season, like, yeah, okay, maybe I can see that. But if this was meant to be, of all of the shows, of all of the episodes that they have, and this still sits at number 63, yeah, that's just sort of surprising to me.
So our next episode, we'll look at season 1, episode 20 with host Madeline Kahn and musical guests Leon and Mary Russell. Christine, I know you won't be with us, but are you excited to not be part of that one, or?
Phew.
Matt, any excitement over Diane Cannon, Leon, or Mary Russell?
None. Zero excitement, but always optimistic. There are so many levels of SNL. Emily Latella is her own.
Gary Weiss is getting down there too. Jesus, he's starting. Christine, this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us and the work you put in. And it was great to have your opinions. You're actually our first female guest host.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me. It was fun. It was really great to have an excuse to look back at that the beginnings of SNL that's become so iconic over the years. So yeah, it's great.
Sure. And hopefully we can have you back. So we'll definitely be in touch. So we'll be back in about a week with episode 20. But until then, we'll be pre-recording our live reactions to a 50-year-old variety show here in SNL.